head of Skeels to Kennedy. Now Radford and Graham leaping at that far side. And Storey to hammer it! And a goal!
He didn't lead with armbands, didn't ask for the spotlight. Peter Storey just showed up. For 15 years, while legends came and went, while banners changed and stadiums sang, he stood his ground. No winks, no waves, no badge kissing. Just a silent destroyer in red and white, who gave Arsenal its spine when football still had a soul. He played 501 times, scored goals that saved seasons, wore the England shirt 19 times and never lost. But when it ended, there were no statues, no tributes, not even a whisper when the club remembers its greats. Because Peter Storey didn't sell dreams, he won wars. And when the game no longer needed a soldier, it buried the name that once held its line. Subscribe if you still believe the giants of football weren't always the ones who roared, but the ones who never ran. He was born on the 7th of September 1945 in Farnham, Surrey, just weeks after the war ended, into a country still rationing bread and a home that didn't know luxury. Peter Edwin Storey didn't grow up with gifts. What he had, he earned. No golden academy path, no soft coaches, just boots too big, tackles too real, and a world that didn't wait for the quiet ones. He wasn't a wonder kid, he wasn't hyped, but there was something in the way he moved tight steps, low center of gravity, and a stillness in his eyes that didn't blink when the chaos came. At 17, he joined Arsenal's youth system in 1961. It wasn't glamour, it wasn't destiny. It was a job, a way out. He trained under George Mayle, an old-school scout who didn't care for flair, he looked for steel. And Storey had it in spades. He never asked when his debut would come. He just turned up, session after session, and made sure no one could take the pitch from him. Then in October 1962, his chance came: League Cup versus Gillingham. No headlines, no dreams fulfilled. Just a boy from Farnham in a red shirt, doing what he was born to do: get stuck in. And from that day forward, Peter Storey was no longer just playing football. He was fighting for something he'd never let be taken from him again. They weren't winning trophies, they weren't chasing headlines. Arsenal in the mid-60s was stuck in the fog, but Peter Storey was learning how to survive the war. He made his league debut in February 1963. Played mostly at right back, covering the flank like a sentry on patrol. He didn't bomb forward, he held the line. For most, it was a quiet role. For Storey, it was a statement. He wasn't chasing cheers, he was building presence. When Bertie Mee took charge in 1966, Arsenal changed. The club went tactical, and Storey, now 21, was no longer just a utility man. Mee moved him into midfield, right where the smoke was thickest. And that's where he became Arsenal's spine. Week after week, he took the bruises no one saw. He kicked through mud, marked danger men like George Best without ever asking for cover. And the players around him, Pat Rice, Frank McLintock, Bob McNabb, they knew. Peter was a nightmare to play against, man marked like a shadow, never let you breathe. Bob McNabb. From 1966 to 1970, while Arsenal tried to remember how to win, Storey made sure they never forgot how to fight. No interviews, no contracts flaunted. Just a destroyer doing the dirty work like it was the most sacred job in football. Because for Peter Storey, it was. By 1970, the world had changed. Arsenal were no longer passengers in the First Division, and Peter Storey was no longer just a destroyer. He was a cornerstone. That year, they won the Intercities Fairs Cup, Arsenal's first European trophy. Storey didn't lift the cup with flair. He lifted it with bruises on his shins and gravel in his voice. And then came 1971. The year that changed the club. It started in the FA Cup semi-final versus Stoke. Arsenal were dying. 2-0 down. Seconds left. Storey scores a volley to bring them back. Then, in injury time, under more pressure than cameras could capture, he takes the penalty. And buries it. The match is saved, the cup lives, and Arsenal go through. 2 weeks later, they win the league title at White Hart Lane. Then beat Liverpool in extra time to win the FA Cup, the double, for the first time in Arsenal history. And through all of it, while Charlie George hit the headlines, while the flair got the praise, Peter Storey was the wall behind the story. He didn't ask for credit. He tackled like the trophy depended on it. And in the end, it often did. No one remembers who stopped the counterattack. They remember who scored. That was fine by me. Peter Storey. The club celebrated. Fans roared. But Storey stayed quiet. Just another job done. Just another war survived. And like always, he walked off the pitch before the cameras caught up. He made his debut in 1971 at 25 years old, deep into a career built on bruises, not banners. No promises, no fanfare, just a quiet man called into the biggest arena. And he didn't flinch. Between 1971 and 1973, Storey earned 19 caps, never once losing in an England shirt. His England record? 10 wins, 9 draws, 0 defeats. Not even Bobby Moore left the shirt with a record that clean. He played alongside Bobby Moore, Alan Ball, Colin Bell, Emlyn Hughes, legends remembered in gold. But Storey? He was the reason they could push forward in peace, the shield behind the sword. He was a manager's player. Alf Ramsey trusted him. Opponents feared him. Fans barely noticed him. And when England failed to qualify for World Cup 1974, the press ripped into everyone else. Storey? He was already gone. He left the England shirt exactly as he wore it, undefeated and uncelebrated. By 1977, the fight was leaving his legs. 15 years, 500 games. Here was a testimonial, a quiet one, against Celtic back in 1972. But by the time he left in 77, it felt like even that had been erased. No send-off. Just a whisper in the hallway that he was being moved on. He joined Fulham, an old club with no fire left, and made just 3 league appearances. It wasn't injury. It wasn't scandal. It was something worse. Emptiness. He'd been a soldier for too long. The war had defined him. And now, there was nothing left to guard. No opponents to stop, no teammates to protect, no badge that still remembered his name. And when he walked away, there were no interviews, no memoirs, no final lap. He just vanished. Because for Peter Storey, football was never about being seen. It was about standing your ground until no one else could. And once the ground no longer needed him, he simply walked away. When the boots came off, there was no plan, no pension, no path. Peter Storey walked out of football and into a world that didn't care who he used to be. He ran a North London pub, the Jolly Farmers. It was rough. It suited him. Then came the whispers. Then came the headlines. 1979, convicted of keeping a brothel. 1980, part of a counterfeit gold scam. Sentenced to 3 years in prison. Then came the porn smuggling case. Then a car theft ring. The man who once wore the England shirt unbeaten was now being marched through courtrooms like a forgotten criminal. I wasn't Peter Storey the footballer anymore, just a number, another file in the system. Peter Storey. The game never called. The club never reached out. The silence was complete. And in the dark, with the world gone quiet, Peter Storey faced the only opponent he could never tackle: himself. He didn't beg for redemption, didn't cry for sympathy. He told the truth. In a book no one in football wanted to read but couldn't ignore. True Story, his 2004 autobiography, was banned in school libraries. Too raw, too honest, too real. Because this wasn't a tale of glory. It was a confession from a man who never lied about what it cost to serve and what it cost to be forgotten. There was no comeback, no coaching job, no TV studio chair, no late career redemption offered by the club he gave everything to. After the courts, after the cells, after the name Peter Storey became a cautionary tale, he vanished. For a while, he drove minicabs in Islington. No one recognized him. No one cared. Later, he took a job as a chauffeur in Istanbul working for Gulf royalty. A ghost in a suit. And then he disappeared into the French countryside. A village near Toulouse, far from Highbury, far from history. He sold his medals, his shirts, his memories, all of it gone for £20,000. Not for profit, for closure. The game forgot me, so I forgot it too. Peter Storey. No interviews, no reunions, no quotes on Arsenal.com, no invites to Legends Day. The boy from Farnham who held back George Best, who scored goals that saved silverware, who never lost in an England shirt now walks through life like none of it ever happened. And maybe that's how he wanted it. Because some men don't need forgiveness, they just need peace. And Peter Storey finally found it in silence. He played 501 times for Arsenal, scored the goals that kept cups alive, wore the England shirt 19 times, never once left the pitch in defeat. He stood beside Moore, he silenced Best. He outlasted generations of stars without ever needing to be one. But there's no statue of Peter Storey, no mural at the Emirates, no call from the club, no moment of silence. Because Peter Storey didn't belong to the era of slogans. He belonged to the war. He never wanted to be anyone's hero. He just wanted to be the man who showed up when the game got hard. And for 15 years he was, until the world changed, until football turned into fame. He vanished. Not because he failed, but because he was never playing their game. Some men are made for trophies, some for glory. But a rare few, are made for the work no one sees, the tackles no one cheers, the loyalty no one remembers. Peter Storey was one of them. And if the game won't honor him, we just did. Subscribe if you still believe the greatest players weren't always the loudest, just the ones who never ran.